On the 20th of March 2024, we had our first release of Varlamore, and with that, the landmass just south of Kourend has continued to grow through numerous updates and, of course, a plethora of quests. Now, I have made a video on Varlamore quite a while ago that released just before the official announcement, but that was made on the basis of the small bits and pieces of lore that we had in-game at the time. But now, with the official release and 2 major updates behind us, I thought it'd be worth taking a look at everything we now know and how exactly the history of Varlamore is shaped. We may as well cover what happens when the gates of Varlamore open up to us as well, and our involvement in the story, because as usual, our bumbling adventurer is right there in the action. Not much is known about the true early history of the lands that would one day be known as Varlamore, only that an ancient race called the Old Ones lived there. They were an advanced civilization, having their own language and even being able to utilise runecrafting, which in turn allowed them to be able to harness great magic. I do wonder what the XP rates would have been like back then. Ruins of their people are still present to this day, with structures and markings of old showing pieces of their history. Much like the kingdoms of our present day, they ruled the lands and were worshippers of Relos and Renewal, dedicating much of their time to this worship. However, peace is never assured on Gielinor. During the Third Age, things began looking rather bleak. Slowly but surely, their race faced extinction, and when your race is facing certain doom, you naturally will fight for survival. And they did, though they attempted to utilise some unconventional methods. If we take a step into the lovely area of Stranglewood, charming name, and the tales surrounding this place are haunting. In their desperation, the Old Ones experimented with soul transference, and though some managed to create a successful method of doing this, their attempts in this forest caused the creation of an entity known as the Strangler. An important part of the process, yes, but one that is parasitic in nature, and it very quickly became a problem not only for the Old Ones, but for nature itself. What was supposed to save them only sought to extinguish them, to spread itself to no end, though a few did survive. To understand what happened to the remaining survivors of the Old Ones, we need to look at Kourend very briefly. If you've watched my other videos, you'll know that there was a rough part of Kourend's history known as the Age of Strife. To cut a long story short, the tyrant Xeric held Kourend in an iron grip, and those brave enough to shed their belongings and risk their lives fled south of the Kebos lowlands. Undoubtedly, many died during this journey. It was these humans and dwarves that attempted to help the Old Ones in their plight, building Mok Hyotel as an archive to store the knowledge they held to be used for future civilizations. Though noble in their effort, it went poorly, as those of you fighting this dude will know. The Old Ones sacrificed themselves to contain the threat, and they were left to slowly wither in the annals of history. Cam Turum was the first modern civilization to be formed within Varlamore, with the dwarves fleeing from Lovacane, followed by 2 distinctive group of humans, the Torcasti and the Pericans, with their civilizations being separated by the river Varla. The Torcasti settled within the rainforest and formed Tal Teclan, with the Pericans founding the town of Fortis. Once established, the 3 groups came together to form the Kingdom of Varlamore, laying roots where history would be made numerous times throughout the years. Those that fled Xeric's domain had their own religious beliefs, though some had abandoned them due to the devastation that the God Wars had wrought upon mainland Gielinor. This led to the perfect breeding ground for new worshippers for the gods native to the lands. The Torcasti practiced Losanium in secret, but over time the worship became more open, converting the Pericans to become the main religion within Varlamore. This unity only allowed the humans to spread their civilization all over the region, with small settlements and even another city called Tempestus being commissioned to signify the unity of the state. Given that their civilizations had boomed, the threat wasn't exactly over, for the beasts of the land had still caused destruction and threatened to destroy the very thing they had fought to build. A demon that plagued the Avium Savannah, the Cloud Titan, and the Colossal Worm were slowly dealt with over many years, and many lives sadly lost. The remnants of the Colossal Worm are actually a historical site that you can jump all over. With these threats dealt with, the following years were peaceful. Civilization boomed, and so did the people that lived within the warm climate of Varlamore. But the next disaster was brewing, and it wasn't a beast that caused it. It was a king. "100 years ago, there lived a man by the name of Imafor Tullus. Son of an abusive father, he ascended the throne and transformed Varlamore from a bustling kingdom into an empire. Some likely revered him, but his rule was seen as a mixed bag, full of controversial policies and acts. It was him that commissioned the Twilight Temple to be built for the worship of renewal, which some figures deemed blasphemous. Beneath the ambiguous rule there was a hidden madness, a cruel and twisting desire that was manifested on the fateful day he invited the Kourend royal family to visit the kingdom. Celebrating his 30th birthday, he gave the Kourend royal family a tour of the kingdom, showing them all the beautiful sights of the land he ruled, and even treating them to a magnificent feast at the Sunrise Palace. You'd think that an emperor in his 30s would be quite the party animal. Wealth, power, land, everything he'd ever want. Well, he spared no expense for the feast, as according to Imafor's Betrayal, there was no less than 50 different dishes to choose from, with live entertainment from the best of the best in the College of Bards. Through a joyous night filled with ale and food, all rose to thank the Emperor and pay their respects for his hospitality. Except this is where everything went wrong. Standing up himself, the Emperor called for his servants to top up the glasses of every guest to have a toast in his honour, and when the royal family had their fill, they collapsed, other guests gasping, some fainting. But one thing was certain, Imafor stood there with a smile on his face, having killed the royal family of Kourend. This started the bloodiest war that Varlamore had ever seen, the War of Betrayal. Though it's a war Imafor clearly wanted, his gaze turned away from his people for too long. The war, as you can imagine, was extremely disappointing for the citizens of Varlamore. So much so that after 6 years of bloodshed, a rebel group formed within the kingdom. No surprise really when Imafor had begun implementing cruel and extreme measures to control his own citizens, even suggesting that they should burn the entirety of the Auburn Valley to cut off the Kourend troops. Things got so bad that Imafor had even begun killing off his own family from the constant state of paranoia he was in. But this all reached its climax at the Battle of the Proud Spire, where the rebel group had him cornered and killed him in the heat of battle. And who dealt the killing blow? Someone he knew very well, his own cousin, Mezpa Arkan, who subsequently ascended the throne and began restructuring Kourend to become a peaceful kingdom once again, ordering the remnants of Imafor Tullus to be tore down, bar the statues, with only the heads removed. A somber reminder to those who had fantasies of tyranny, and since his ascension, the kingdom became much more peaceful, and things once again boomed. And though tensions still exist between the two kingdoms in the modern day, the great-granddaughter of Mezpa seeks to allow the kingdoms to cooperate once again, which we can see when she visits the feast at the end of A Kingdom Divided. Seeing the Queen of Varlamore would have been quite the sight to behold, a sign that the borders would soon open to the Shining Kingdom. Despite the death of a newly crowned king and his son taking over, we finally take a peek inside that very kingdom. Fulfilling the goals of her great-grandfather, Queen Zayani Arkan opened trade routes into Varlamore, sending diplomatic missions to Mistalin to establish open lines of communication. Though, almost immediately, there was an assassination plot that we stopped in its tracks, which at the very least allowed a treaty to be signed between the two kingdoms. And that way, we can take our first steps into Varlamore. Given that we've had the majority of the Varlamore releases giving us access to most of Varlamore, so don't worry Tempestus, we'll get to you eventually. We've got the bustling city of Civitas Illifortis, where home burglary rates have skyrocketed for some reason. The Colosseum, of course, where the best in slot range quiver is staring at us. But the rest of Varlamore is host to many more activities. The Hunters Guild, the Giant Worm Agility Course, Huey Kotal waiting at the top of a mountain, Ents waiting for totems to be made, the Mixing Herbology minigame. There's something for everyone. Oh, and the cultists, of course, but we'll get to that soon. Naturally, we do get involved in everyone's lives, so to give you all a quick summary about all the extra stuff that we do. We help an actor with his performance in a manner, subsequently get blamed for a murder before solving it ourselves, which we can pat ourselves on the back for that. The Grand Museum has some items stolen, and we help to solve that situation. Naturally, the British Museum, once again, the Varrock Museum has stolen the items, albeit it was a misunderstanding. We also help open a prison that was meant to contain 3 elemental Nagwa, but we do manage to subdue them long enough to re-prison them and open up a new boss, so it's fine. We get a hand in learning how to hunt the local fauna, help a local chef open up his very own kebab shop, help an egg, numerous eggs, even jaguar eggs, take part in rigging a political election amongst frogs, build some totems, and help Auburnvale solve their missing child problem. All in a day's work for the best adventurer Gilnor has ever seen, am I right? But with the smaller scale stuff out the way, during your adventures you'll come to notice that there seems to be a little bit of a cult hiding in the shadows. Sure, your first taste is the assassination plot right before we enter the kingdom, but there are much larger things at play. In short, the Twilight Emissaries are a fanatical religious group obsessed with an idea called Zimawa, which they perceive to mean the end of Gilnor. A great cycle of death and rebirth, believing that the Old Ones were part of the last cycle and willingly died out to fuel this great ideal. And this group play as the primary antagonist within the Twilight Emissary questline. Throughout this questline we face many trials and tribulations, where our friend Servius is nearly killed from the assassination attempt during Twilight's Promise, and we first see the true strength of the Twilight cultists. Things come to a head during the 3rd quest, in which we are employed by Prince Isla to go undercover and join the Twilight Emissaries to really figure out what's going on. And oh boy, do we find out some shocking things. Through several fights and also nearly being killed by Prince Isla, we are welcomed into the cult, only to find out that Metzli, the Teokan of Renewal, is actually the Augur of the Twilight Emissaries, and is leading the cult in worshipping Ennius and Furia Tullus, the descendants of Immafor Tullus, you know, the beheaded statue guy. She believes they are reincarnations of Renewal and Ralos. Eventually, we find our way into the ruins of Tapoyawik, an Old One's prison. We solve some puzzles before we reach Amoxliatl, who divulges the important information the cult is after, the location of Mokhayotl. Though this meeting is interrupted, and after Prince Isla is teleported away, we have to fight the Frost Nagwa and we barely escape with our lives, looking onwards to the finale. Our journey leads us to the final dawn, the thrilling conclusion of the Twilight Emissary storyline. Though throughout the quest we infiltrate the Twilight Emissaries once more and figure out their plans are not looking good. They've captured the prince, and through some handy stealth checks we figure out where Itzla is located, while witnessing some sibling feudery. Killing an enforcer to maintain our cover, we return to the palace and report on everything that we've seen. Sneaking into a new cultist base, we set up a trap for Forebearer Janus and capture him, and we see the type of justice that the Queen herself deals to those who betray her, and her son. Through this, we find out that someone from Camtorum has decided to help the Twilight cultists, so our investigation leads to the Dwarven City. We do some digging, help someone get drunk, and we discover the Tullus twins talking with Tiumo, who is the dwarf that's been helping the cult, being bribed for his assistance. Wasting no time, we rush to Napotzli to help against the cultist tampering, while confronting the Tullus twins. We do kill some cultists before leaving for Tal Teclan. Whilst there, we survive against a few waves of cultists before the Queen saves Itzla and orders him to leave, with us chasing down the leaders. We then have a fight against the Tullis twins, learning how Metzli convinced them to join her plot as she promised the throne back to them after their ancestors' betrayal. We kill Ennius and wound Fioria as she runs away, and Itzler returns geared up, convincing us to go deeper. Eventually we come across Metzli, who reveals that Mokiatl is an archive built by the Old Ones, before assaulting us. Once we get her down, we discover that the archives are essentially barren, save for a stone tablet where the Old Ones are referred to as the Kuhu. Fioria does reappear, purely to finish off Metzli, and we subdue her. And through a bit more investigation we find out that during construction, an ancient terror was awoken, so the archive couldn't be finished, and what had been created was then destroyed. With our quest done, Itzler convinced his mother to spare Fioria's life, and we receive the Archon Blade as a quest reward, alongside some free XP, which is always nice. Having done our part in stopping the Final Dawn, we can rest easy before taking on the doom of Mokiatl. And that's pretty much it so far. Obviously we're going to have Tempestus come out at some point in the future, but Varlamore is almost complete, and we've had a lot of adventures here, as well as a lot of new training methods. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and just remember, don't let the gemstone crab kill you. P.S. What is a horse?